the best way to explain bare knuckle is having that calmness in the chaos.
How did you fall out with Dave Feldman, the owner of it?
So this is another funny story. So
who would have won, do you reckon, at your prime, you or Conor McGregor?
what, bare knuckle?
Yeah.
I'd say me. I still think to this day, no one fights like me. No one talks like me. No one's as controversial as me. And perhaps that's a good and a bad thing. There was a hell of a lot promised to me.
Yeah.
And the very least was delivered.
Sometimes you have got to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Is there any accountability from you? What was your relationship like with Nate Shook?
I've never got on with Nate Shook. I've not met an honest promoter yet. I walked into the Matchroom office, had a sat down with Eddie Hearn. I've never really told people this story, but I was
Tyler, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we've been chatting for over about a year now, haven't we?
We have now.
We have.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to this one, mate.
Yeah.
Let's roll all the way back. How did you end up becoming one of the most controversial bare knuckle fighters in the world?
I mean, my career started when I was 10 years old as an amateur boxer back in Ely, Cambridgeshire. I ended up having 70 amateur fights. Turning professional at like 18, 19 down in London under Tony Sims and Peter Sims. I was very lucky in the gym that I fought in. I was training alongside Anthony Joshua, Darren Barker, Kevin Mitchell, Ricky Burns, like top world champion fighters. So I turned pro when I was 18, 19, had my first pro fight on Tyson Fury's show. It was... big from the start, on massive bills. I won the English title as a 23-year-old on TV, on Sky Sports.
Wow, fair play.
I had a great career. Even as an amateur, I won the ABAs, junior ABAs, got to the final of the ABAs and stuff like that. So I was a busy boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
What the sort of journey you went on then as you're going through there? When was it when you actually turned pro? How old were you?
I turned pro, so I think I was just 19 when I turned pro. I was struggling really, like for people who know, like the amateur scene, just trying to get fights. Like everyone was only waiting to fight in the championships. So, I was struggling to get fights. At this point, I was going down to Haynall in Essex, London to train under Tony Sims. And he's
good trainer.
Yeah, great trainer.
Yeah,
like I say, the stable I was in, I was very lucky with the people I was training with, the sparring I was getting, everything else. And he sort of advised me and said, look, you're struggling to get fights in the amateur scene. I'd won the ABAs. I was struggling to get in as the GB squad, to get trials to go to the Olympics and everything else. So he just advised me to turn professional and that's what I did.
Obviously going from amateur to professional, what's the biggest difference?
So the biggest difference for me, it's the amateur game and the pro game has changed a lot in the last few years. I mean, when I was amateur, it was fighting, point scoring, 2-minute rounds and everything else. So the game was very different. The people who were having a lot of success in the amateurs were sort of point scoring, type fighters. I was a bit of a blunderbuss. I like to get stuck in, come forward.
I've seen.
Yeah. So it was, I'd done well as an amateur, but everyone used to say, look, you're going to be a lot more suited to the pros, your style and everything else, the longer rounds and everything else. So, I turned professional and took to it very well. Trouble was where I wasn't signed to such a big promoter early on. I had to take a lot of big fights.
So you were signed to a big promoter, or you weren't? So
no, I was fighting under Hennessy Sports for a few shows early on, obviously, who looked after Tyson Fury.
Right. Is he still about?
I think so, yeah. Channel 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I say, I made my professional debut on a Tyson Fury show and then my third fight was on a Tyson Fury show, but I still wasn't signed to a promoter. So, I wasn't really being looked after. And again, anyone knows anything about, professional combat sport, it's everything to be signed to a promoter, to be looked after. Otherwise, you're just trying to sell tickets and build your fan base and that off your own back, really.
Was there a promoter back then you were like, yeah, I really want to go and work with those guys?
So I think, especially in Britain, being under the Matchroom banner, I think is everything. Or Frank Warren, obviously.
The Matchroom as in Barry and Eddie Hearn.
Yeah. So, it was, just trying to put some performances in that would obviously get me, linked to Matchroom, to Eddie Hearn and that. So, and eventually I did.
Oh, you did? You worked for Eddie Hearn, did you?
I fought many times. I fought, how many times? I fought for the English title in the MEN Arena, Sky Sports again. A guy against Tyrone Nurse, his name was, who went on to win the British title. A guy called Ricky Boylan, who was 12-0. I fought for the English title. I ended up beating him. I fought
when
times.
you roll back at that age and you Eddie knocks on your door and says, like, I want to work with you. What was that feeling like?
Yeah, it was great. Like, like I say, I was only 20, 21. So as a kid, you think to yourself, wow, I've made it. I'm fighting on Sky Sports and, I'm getting all these people to come see me. I'm fighting at the O2 Arena, the MEN Arena, Earls Court, Wembley Arena. Obviously, you think you've made it. But as we'll touch on later on, the trouble with boxing is, well, most combat sports, it's just the money doesn't reflect where you're at in your career, So, at this point, I was living in Ely, Cambridgeshire, but I made the move down to Essex, London, so I could base myself at my gym full time and be training. You're obviously you're taking a lot on by not working, moving yourself away from your family, your friends, and everything else to work full time. And then, like I say, that the money really doesn't reflect, the level you're fighting at.
So give me an example. When you signed for Matchroom, what did the contract say? Did it say you have a certain amount of fights? If you keep winning, the money goes up. Do you know how much you're getting each fight before the fight? Is it to do with ticket sales? How does the business model work for a fighter?
So a lot of it, most people, professional fighters nowadays, will be making their money off ticket sales. That's just how it is. When you're signed to a big promoter like Matchroom, that obviously, you will get a fight purse, especially if you're fighting for a title. To put it into terms, I fought for the English title, packed O2 Arena. I was the B-side fighter at this point because I was looking to make myself into a Matchroom fighter by beating one of his guys who was 12-0 at the time. I was fighting for the English title, like I say. Anthony Joshua was the main event. I was co-main event, but I'm walking away with $4,500 from that fight. So, and when you break it down, you think that you've trained for 10 weeks for that fight. It's less than minimum wage, really.
But is that a stepping stone, though? That 4.5 Gs must then go to, if you win that, then it must go to 25 Gs or 50 Gs. How does it work?
So after that fight, I was then offered the WBC International, which again is a belt where, had I won that fight, I would have been ranked top 15 in the world. But again, you're on $8,000 a fight. It's a 10-round title fight. You're having to train 10, 12 weeks because at the end of the day, the guys you're fighting are full-time fighters. So you can't afford to be working a day job all day and not being able to train to the intensity that they're putting in. You've got to be doing what they're doing. A lot of fighting. Like anyone will tell you, you're doing it for the love of it, especially early on, to see where it goes. But it's a tough sport.
Roughly what year did you sign for Matchroom?
So what's this, 10 years ago now.
Okay, so 2014.
Yeah, 2014 is when I won the English title.
Okay. And how did that relationship pan out?
So it wasn't as straightforward as I'd hoped. Like I say, I'd actually come from like being the B-side fighter. So the B-side fighter is basically you turn up as the opponent to be fed to the Matchroom fighter. They're going to walk away with the win on paper. I don't mind being a B-side fighter. I like being the underdog. I've had to do it all my career. The fight before I actually won the English title, I fought a guy called, like I say, Tyrone Nurse. He'd had 28, 127. I think it was about my 11th fight at the time. So it was a big step up. We had an absolute war of a fight. He then moves on, vacated the English title to go for the British. So the English title was then vacant. And that's when I was brought in again to fight Matchroom's golden boy at the time, Ricky Boylan, who was 12-0.
So, but you're a Matchroom fighter fighting another Matchroom fighter.
I was
before you signed.
Point, I was still not a Matchroom fighter.
What privileges do you get for being part of Matchroom stable?
Just
for you,
a lot of a massive boost to your profile. Tickets, everything. As the B-side fighter, you are more or less. Yeah, you're just the opponent. You're not really brought in, under any real, fanfare or anything like that. It's just like, right, Tyler Goodjohn versus Ricky Boylan, the 12-0, everything was in his favour. I went in and I tore the script up. I won the fight. I won the English title. But the trouble for me, I was really, really struggling to make the 10 stone limit at the time. Really struggling. I had top nutritionists, everything else, and I remember I still having to lose like 7 pounds on the morning.
Jesus.
Of the weigh-in.
On the morning.
On the morning.
How on earth are you going to lose half a stone?
I was just literally hour and a half on the bike, sweatsuits. I'd been doing saunas the night before and everything else. So at this point, I was dry as a bone. I turned up. I remember actually turning up late to the weigh-in, and the Matchroom weigh-ins are always loads of people watching the weigh-ins. Turned up and it was 0.1. Their trainer Jamie Moore at the time, he's not made the weight. So I ripped my pants off, took the chewing gum out of my mouth, took my earrings out like that, stepped on, and I just made 10 stone. And then thankfully I've managed to rehydrate enough, to go in there and put a good performance on.
So when you're dry as a bone and you've cut for weight, how much can you put on for the next day?
Do you know what? Some of these, it's such a science. It's such a science to it. I mean, 10 years ago, I didn't know as much as I do now. So, I was losing the weight, but I wasn't rehydrating properly. Doing all the right things that I know now, basically. So, some fighters, like some of these UFC guys, put 20, 25 pounds on.
You're joking,
overnight,
mate.
Overnight, yeah.
Bloody hell.
So, you can...
That's a massive advantage, right?
Huge.
Say if you put on £7 overnight and gives you a fight and put on 14, 16 pounds. That's a huge amount.
Huge. And that's trying to explain that to someone, because, sometimes like £7, people will be like, that's not too much, but... Like you say, when that £7 advantage turns into 14, turns into 20, and by the time you get in the ring, you're fighting someone who's a stone and a half heaven you. Yeah. It's a big difference. That's why everyone does it. There's such a massive thing in fighting now with cutting weight. Everyone has to do it because if you're natural at the weight, you're going to be at a big disadvantage.
What's the mindset like? You're training, cutting, ready for the scales. We've all cut, and you're just like, oh my God, I've got nothing to give here. Yeah. How do you then expect to fight 24 hours later or the following day and going, okay, well, feed up? Is your mind ready? Are you at peak? You feeling at peak the following day?
It's funny because you weigh in, and that's like in your head, it's the fight's been won by the time you weigh in. You're like, wow, well, now I can sort of enjoy the fight a little bit. But like I say, with the fight where I won the English title and had to lose 7 pounds on the morning, I won the fight, and afterwards I said to my parents, I said to everyone, I said to my trainer, I can't do this weight anymore, man. Like it's gonna kill me. Do you know what I mean? I can't be getting in this ring fighting 10 rounds after all that, the week build up, having to just drain myself. So I walked into the Matchroom office in Brentwood. I had a sat down with Eddie Hearn, told him all about it, said, look, I can't make this weight anymore. He said to me, look, if you move up in weight, you won't be fighting for titles anymore. You won't be on TV. You'll be back on 1,500, $2,000 a fight on 6-rounders like this. He had a fight for me in mind with a guy called John Wayne Hibbert, who was a local sort of grudge match at the time for this WBC international belt. He turned around and said to me, look, even if you lose this fight, we'll sign you on a 3-fight deal worth $12,500 a fight. I had to give up my English title. He paid me £1,000 to vacate my title so that 2 other people could fight for it. So I sort of left that office like, do you know what? I can do this one more time. I've got nothing to lose. If he's going to sign me on a free fight deal, we posed for the photo, had a piece of paper in front of us. It wasn't the official contract, but he said, look, we'll just do the picture for it and everything else. So yeah, I went out, I left the office thinking to myself, all right, okay, a free fight deal. Even if I lose this fight, we'll move up in weight, be on decent dough. So I went into that fight. My last fight at 10 stone, I lost 18 pounds in the last week. It was just disgusting.
Wow.
Where we had because when the WBC, you have to fight, you have a check weigh-in. So a check weigh-in about 4 days before. So you have to be like a few pounds off, the official weight. So I'd had to lose a lot of weight for that and then lose even more weight for the official weigh-in. And yeah, the best way to explain going into that fight was I was like 2 seconds behind every punch. Obviously, where you're so dehydrated, I just couldn't react to anything. And I remember warming up on the pads with my trainer then, Peter Sims. And usually when he's throwing punches at me on the pads, I'm slipping and rolling. He can't hit me. And we were warming up and he's hitting me with everything. So and I just couldn't react to anything. So the Sky guy comes in, right, 5 minutes, walk on. So we're ready. And at that point, I'm like, you've just got to face the music. Do you know what I mean? You can't, what can you say to anyone now? So I went out there. I got put over in the second round. I had to have 16 stitches. I got a huge cut in the second round as well. Managed to fight on for like another 6-7 rounds. And then, I got stopped on my feet. And that was it. But, after that fight, never heard a thing from Matchroom again.
Did you sign a contract with Matchroom?
Nah, so like I say, we posted the picture and everything else, and it was like, I'm signing this free fight deal. He says to me, right, we'll get this contract set up, all written down and signed properly. So my problem was I was very naive. I was a 23-year-old kid, and yeah, I just. At the mercy of the promoter at the end of the day. He said to me, even if I lost this fight, I'd be fighting on with Matchroom, and that was it. I've never heard from him again.
Did you not call him up straight after?
I did. I've had me and him know. I've messaged him since about it. I've put things up on Instagram, the picture of me posing with this so-called free fight contract. I've put it up on my Instagram a couple of times. Eddie messaged me himself and said, look, this was when I was currently in America. When you come back to England, let's sit down and talk about this contract. And then actually I posted it again about 7-8 months later. And within the hour, my Instagram, boom, gone, deleted. And I was on 45K, blue tick, done, gone. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was... at that point as well, under a free fight deal on Matchroom, you think you've made it.
What, 12.5 grand a pop?
Yeah.
So for you at that time, 12.5 G's is a lot of dough, right?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's more than ever been paid at that point. So, now it seems like nothing. But when I was 23, I was living on my own in Essex, and I was training full time and everything else. 12.5 grand was a lot of money.
So how have you left it then?
So
how have you left it? Is it down to bad communication? Is it down to what were you like to deal with? Let's get there. I want to dig a little bit deeper there. Were you a pain to deal with, or were you easy to deal with? Was there anything that you were like, you knew you'd annoy someone, annoying the promoter, or you're outspoken, or anything like that?
I'm outspoken now.
Were you then?
No, 10 years ago, I would say I was the easiest person to manage in the world. You told me to fight someone, I'd fight him.
So you just game to fight.
If anything, fighters need to be protected from themselves a little bit, and people need to say, look, do you know what, actually, that fight's probably a little bit soon for you or something else. But I wasn't that person. I was just like, no, throw me in. Like I say, I didn't mind being the B-side fighter and stuff like that. So, yeah, for me, I didn't, I done what I was told at the end of the day. The trouble is, there's going to be loads of stories like this about
there's always, the thing is, there's always 3 sides to every story.
Yeah.
Yours, Eddie's, and the truth or whatever. If you were to sit here today and say what actually happened, what you're telling me here, exactly, would Eddie say the same?
No, of course he wouldn't.
What do you think Eddie would? What do you think Eddie would say?
He said to me on that message when he messaged me about next time you're in England.
So this was roughly 2014, was it?
This is 2014.
And then when you went to America, what 2019, 2020?
So I'm still got to massively got to be in my bonnet about
for all those years.
All these years, yeah.
And today.
And today, yeah,
Okay.
massively.
How do you think you could clear that up with Eddie? If he was in here today, how do you think you could clear that conversation up with him? There's nothing worse in life and business that something's just hanging over you. He's probably thinking completely different to what you're thinking. Is there a way of just clearing it up and then moving forward?
I'm not sure.
For your own mind?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, obviously, it'd be down to what if he offered me something now. I'm not really sure. To me, I don't know how much I'm worth to Eddie Hearn, which is what it boils down to at the end of the day. So, perhaps 10 years ago, he was thinking differently. I know that when he messaged me, he said, oh, it must have been down to something about if you lost your fight, you wouldn't be fighting on. And that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. But like you say, it's his word against mine. But I feel such a way about it, even 10 years on. I feel a way about it because as a fighter, at the end of the day, you're getting in there and you're putting your life at risk. I'm taking your word for it. He's given me £1,000 to vacate my English title.
Why did you take that grand?
Because again, I needed the money.
Okay. Did you negotiate it?
It was just a thing between us two in his office.
Yeah.
I'll give you £1,000. It sounds ridiculous. I think I sound stupid saying that I would take £1,000 for that. Yeah. But at the time, 23 years old, broke as hell, living on a dream, trying to stay in Essex so I could fight full time. I'd take anything. And I do think that most promoters prey on the fact that most fighters will take. Like I've said, many times, fighters need to be protected from themselves.
Yeah.
Because you told us to fight someone, we'll fight them.
Yeah.
And it probably won't be for a lot and we'll still do it. Whereas someone else would probably go, actually, no, you could get a bit more for that fight.
Did you ever think about negotiating a deal? Or were you just like, if there's the money, you go, yeah, I'll take it? Because that can be quite vulnerable at times. As a businessman or a promoter looking in, if you whack a deal on, I say, I'm going to give you 20 grand for a fight and you don't negotiate. And I'm thinking, well, I probably had 30 or 40 grand in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you ever look back and go, I wish I negotiated? Or were you just happy to be part of the whole thing?
I think when you've been in the game so long, you understand that being a fighter, you're on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
So if you don't take that fight, someone else is taking it. Yeah. So it's one of them where, like I say, I was a B-side fighter for many fights. I would get offered a fight and I'd take it there and then because I knew if I had time to think about it, he'd perhaps change the opponent and try and get someone else in. So it's just fighting you're a conveyor belt. If you don't do it, someone else will do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just got to take it.
If Eddie popped in now, what would you say to Eddie Hearn?
I just want to say, where is that contract? Where is that contract? I've got the picture. We posed for it. I put up on all my socials. I've signed for a free fight deal with Matchroom. I thought I'd made it. Like I say, I'm getting to fight on all these big shows on Sky Sports. I'm co-main event. It's not even like I'm part of the undercard. I'm a big part of the shows. I just want to know, where is it? What happened to that contract? I'm not the only one it's happened to. The trouble is most people are too scared to speak out about it.
Who holds the weight these days, the promoter or the fighter?
Promoters all day, every day, yeah.
But do you not think that has changed over the years? Because do you not think?
No, not unless you're
top.
An Anthony Joshua, where you're the cash cow and they're depending on you to put a show on and stuff like that. Like I say, it's a conveyor belt. If you don't take that fight, okay, I'll give it to someone else then. It's not...
Do you not think that you should have chased up signing the contract?
100%.
So you've got to take some responsibility there. Go, right, I'm not going to get in the ring. Give me that free thing, bang, I sign, right, we're in, we're going.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of responsibility there. Maybe you should have gone, you know what?
Do you know what, Dodge? I'm annoyed at myself for being so naive at the time. Eddie's a charming man. He's been to business school. He knows all the spiel. He knows how to talk to people. And unfortunately, as a 22, 23-year-old, I thought, oh, he's a friend of mine. He wouldn't, and all this. There's no friends in this game. And I had to learn that the hard way, So I definitely take the share of the responsibility that I was naive to trust him and believe what he was saying and that. But I was just going along with, what I was told at the end of the day. Yeah.
And how long did that take for you to then go, right, I want to get into bare knuckle fighting?
So even more of my story.
Yeah.
So at this point, I've just fought, I've won the English title. I've now left Matchroom, not heard from Matchroom again. So I've actually moved back to Ely, Cambridgeshire.
So what year are we roughly talking
We're
here?
talking about 2015,
Okay.
2016 now. So I'm back home in Ely, Cambridgeshire. I'm being trained by a trainer from my amateur days into my pro days now, like Steve Whitwell. I was just having a few fights just here and there, just trying to build my profile back up on the small hall shows, which is very difficult because obviously you're surviving on ticket sales. And I'm a big ticket seller, but when I'm from Ely and I'm fighting every other month in London, and you're expected to sell 200 tickets every couple of months, it's very difficult. So I just couldn't stay active.
Would you take the door money on those 200 tickets? Is that going to you? Or is that going to the promoter and he's giving you a guaranteed lump up front?
Yeah, so you're with tickets that I know has changed slightly now. Like my trainer that I'm talking about, Steve Whitwell, he's explained it to me now. Like a lot of boxing, obviously, if you're not fighting in 50-50 fights, if you're fighting, I don't know, a journeyman or something like that, you have to pay their purse up front, which could be, $2,000, $2,500. Then you've got to pay the promoter his bit. So it could be £500, $1,000, and then you'll take whatever's left over.
Yeah,
so could be $1,000, could be $1,500. Yeah. I've known fighters not cover the money on their ticket, so they've had to put their own money in to fight, like a professional fight, and they've had to pay like £500.
And they're putting their life on the line.
Putting their life on the line, and they're getting the ring. They're paying themselves to fight. Yeah, I've known a few people do that.
I want to roll back a little bit further. What were you like as a kid?
So I started boxing at 10 as a chubby kid. My mum and dad took me boxing. I lost my first 6 fights as an amateur. I was
What
rubbish.
were you like at school?
So
what was your character?
Really quiet up until about 10 years old. And I don't know, like me and my mum speak about it now, whether it was the boxing or what was it, what it was. But as soon as I got into secondary school, I got heavily into into fighting a lot. I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed, it sounds funny now, I enjoyed being the top dog, as a kid. I remember, I said this to a few people, when I first started boxing, I actually remember at school, I was just starting to get teased about my weight. And I don't know if that was something in my head to get me to go boxing or not. Just to sort of be able to learn, to stick up for myself and everything else. And then, once I sort of I lost the weight and everything else, I become sort of top dog in the school and in my area and then everything else. And
were you partying?
A lot, yeah.
A lot?
Yeah.
Give me an example. We're like 16, 17, 18, 19, before you went to London.
Even well earlier than that, with 12, 13. I think, I've discussed this with my friends, here in England, we have such a big drinking culture, don't we? So from the age of 12, 13, I was out drinking with my friends, we'd be fighting and everything else. And that went on for years. I got myself in a lot of trouble, got myself arrested quite a few times. And then it actually culminated when I was 15 years old. I got heavily beaten up with a metal baseball bat over at Linton in Haverhill, Cambridgeshire. Ended up in hospital. I had to get my ear stitched back on and stuff like that.
What was that about?
So that was over a couple of girls. I'd actually boxed the night before as an amateur. My mates were a little bit older than me, and they just said, look, do you want to come and see these couple of girls, have a few drinks, everything else? So yeah, go on. So they were driving. We went over there. We had a few drinks with these girls. And there was a gang of lads from that area who obviously had something to do with these girls. You know, things were said between us, you know, sort of shouting and things like that. And I remember one of the guys saying to the girls, right, get that boxer down here, like that. And at this point, at 15, I was absolutely fearless. I didn't care who you were or anything. So I went down there. I remember it was a big like recreation ground, real sunny day. I had my top off. I've gone running down there. Right, which one of you want it first? And one of them's come up behind me with a metal baseball, boom, ping me right in the back of the head. I've turned around, bang, bang. He's hit me about 5 or 6 times with it. It's actually, my ears actually come like loose like that, squirting blood. I was an absolute mess. He's chucked the baseball bat to just have it like that. Boom, I've managed to get a couple on him, get him down to the ground. He's managed to wriggle out and just run off. But I was such a mess that even his friends are all coming up to me, are you all right? And everything else. This is like, people who know about this. Yeah. It's a bit of a legend in that area. Yeah. A few people have messaged me and said, like, I've heard this story where the guy like smashed you up with a baseball bat and you still managed to get the better of him. The 2 friends I was with at the time run off and left me. So all I'm thinking when that kid was hitting me with a baseball bat is if I drop to the floor, all his friends are just going to they're going to kill me. Do you know what I mean? I hit that floor, they're going to stomp on me. So yeah, I managed to keep on my feet, managed to fight this lad. He managed to run off. All his friends are coming up to me, are you all right? Because I was really in a bad way. I've managed to walk back into Linton High Street and my 2 friends were there to stay in the car. I said, look, you've got to get me at Addenbrooke's, man, to the hospital. So they dropped me off at Addenbrooke's and I was so young. I was 15, so I weren't even allowed into the adult part of the hospital. So I'm in the children's part, you know, with all like cartoons of animals all over the wall. And I walked in head to toe, red. I'd had a big burn mark across my stomach where he'd hit me with the bat across my stomach.
Why did it just come about? Just go over a couple of girls?
These couple of girls.
How were you as a character back then? Like as a character, if you explain you at the age of 15 to 19, 20, were you ag? Were you looking for ag? Were you angry? Were you looking for?
Yeah. I would say I was ag until I was about 18.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point, I was very much looking to be the top dog. If you didn't think I was the top dog, well, I'd prove it. I remember, you know, I had two lads jump me off my bus stop once when I was coming home from school, jump me, and they had a camcorder to try and record me getting beaten up, and obviously managed to get the better of them then. I was fight every weekend without fail. My poor mum. Having to come pick me up from hospital, pick me up from Parkside Police Station.
Is your mum still about?
Yeah. Absolute angel.
And did you have a fatherly figure?
Yeah, so my dad's there.
Was he a role model to you?
Yeah, like role model as in like sport. Yeah. My dad was like heavily into football. So as a kid, like I was pushed more in the direction to do football. I think that's probably like in his head why he took me boxing to lose weight, because I was a good little footballer. But I definitely didn't have the mentality, the temperament for it. Again, I'll be fighting on the football pitch. My poor mum and dad had to watch me get sent off numerous times.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, one brother who boxed as well, 5 years older than me. But he's got his shit together. He's a little bit more sensible than me. But yeah, we started at the same time, 5 years. He actually won his first 4 fights. Like I say, I lost my first 6 fights. And then he lost his 5th and had a little bit of time out, whereas I just stuck at it. I think where I was 11 years old.
Keep going.
You know, I wasn't having my friends like taking the piss out of me for losing fights. I just enjoyed it. So I stuck at it and...
And what did you get nicked for?
Just fighting.
So the whole world has been fighting from a kid all the way to the age of 33 now.
Fighting. But I will say, like, when I just said, like, it sort of changed for me when I turned 18, when I was looking to turn pro, because I moved down to Wessex and I was in a pro gym and I'm with professionals.
Proper discipline.
You realise you can't be like that.
Yeah.
You really, like, all these people, like, some of the best people I've ever met in my life are fighters. The most
Where'd you get
honest.
Where'd you get your self-belief from?
I'm not sure, you know. Probably my parents, I would say.
Yeah.
My parents have been a huge, always supported me no matter what, always believed in me no matter what. But yeah, there's been, even in my amateur career, there's been times where, like, yeah, I'm not really sure where I've mustered the motivation just to keep going, but I have, and I'm thankful that I have.
I've seen in your fights, some of the stuff you sent me, like, keep going forward, keep going forward, and your face is battered.
Yeah.
And his face is battered. You've got claret all coming down. You can't see, and you're still fighting, going on the front foot. Yeah. It's like proper gladiator stuff.
Yeah.
Like this bare knuckle boxing is a whole new level of combat sport, right?
Yeah.
Can you just explain to the listener what the difference in bare knuckle boxing and MMA?
So,
in brutality wise,
just like in terms of, I always say to people, look, I feel that boxing is a lot more dangerous than bare knuckle, actually.
You do?
Yeah, a lot more, because you look at the injuries that people get, you know, the brain injuries, you know, everything else is through prolonged punishment, 10, 12 round fights. You can take a lot more punches with gloves, obviously, than you can bare knuckle. So you look at all the people who have got them brain injuries, it's always been in them long, hard fights. Whereas bare knuckle, look, you take one flush, you're getting knocked out, and you just can't take the punches. You can't punch as hard as if you've got a glove on.
Yeah. Are you aware of that? Do you punch differently in bare knuckle compared to boxing?
Yeah. So
what's the difference?
So you have to land all your shots on your two knuckles, which are meant to be for punching. You know, if you're hitting with that side of your hand, you're breaking your hand. So you know, your accuracy has to be bang on. So you're landing all your shots, even like your jab. So you imagine when you got a boxing glove on, you know, you can sort of flick your jab out without even making a hand. But with bare knuckle, you're jabbing, you're trying to twist it in, you're landing everything on the two knuckles, you know. So, but that being said, obviously a jab can do hella damage compared to what a jab with a boxing glove will do. You know, like you get a jab bare knuckle, and it opens up cuts on your face, the blood's then running into your eyes. And
what's that feeling like when you're fighting someone and he's on the front foot, you're on the front foot, but you can't see it out of one eye because of the blood?
Yeah, is it
literally
scary.
like blind?
Scary.
Is it literally blind in one eye?
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. I think like the worst fight when I fought a guy called James Lilly at Wembley Arena bare knuckle. And when I look back on that fight, I mean, I messed that fight up myself. I was far too aggressive. Went out there like first 10 seconds throwing bombs. He's a good fighter, James Lee, very experienced bare knuckle fighter. And he caught me with a great shot on the ear, funnily enough, that I got hit with the bat. So that split in half. And as I've turned round, he's caught me square on with a right hand. It's just completely shut my left eye there and then, just shut it. So later as the fight's gone on, I've then got a cut on the other eye as well. So I'm just going forward. Because I'm thinking to myself, if I take a step off and show him that he's hurt me here, he's going to finish me. So I'm just going forward, beating my chest like, nah, you didn't hurt me. And I could not see. So even the blood, where that was going into my eye, it just goes completely white. So like on the video, you can just see me constantly trying to get the blood out of my eyes. But yeah, when I explain to people, they're like, you just keep going forward. And I'm like, because
everyone knows you as that though. Everyone knows you are proper game.
Poker faced. I'm very poker faced. I will never, ever, ever show you that you've hurt me. Because I feel like, look, if someone shows me that I've hurt them, it's game over.
Yeah, okay.
So
can you flick the switch like that?
What, go from like,
so me and you having a chat now.
Yeah.
And you were upset about something happened, someone's coming in, can you flick the switch like that?
I think like with me now, like as I've grown up and now I'm 33, like when I was a kid, I would take disrespect very easily. Like it could be something very small. Yeah. Whereas now, and all the fighting I've done and everything else, it does take me a lot, you know.
So for example, you're driving here, You come down to Bournemouth. You're driving back. Someone cuts you up.
Yeah.
And gives it all the mouth out the window. How would you react?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Yeah, like I obviously being this age now, you've just got so much more to lose. I think as a kid, like you're just as game as anything, and you think you can take the world on. You think you're invincible. But yeah, the biggest, probably the best thing that happened for me was when I was 18, moved down to Essex, turned professional with Tony Sims, being around all them world champions, European champions, British champions, seeing how they acted, on a day-to-day basis. And they weren't doing any of the rubbish or getting into any of the stuff that I was getting into. And that was like, for me, that was a bit of a, a wake-up call. Be like, look, if you want to make something out of this game, you need to change. You can't be this little idiot that goes around getting in trouble in the streets and everything else. So that was a massive wake-up call for me, yeah.
When did you start getting tattoos put on your face and around all your body and stuff?
I started
What's the tattoo at the top here? What's that say?
So that says Trust Kills.
Trust Kills.
So again, that's another story.
What's that story?
So that story is going back about 4 years ago at a party with another professional bare-knuckle fighter, someone that at the time I would have called a best friend.
Who's that?
James Kennelly, his name was. He fights under BYB, which is in the Triangle Ring.
Is that BYB? I've just bought BKB, right?
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, we're good friends. So another part of my story is that I fell into the adult industry world a little bit.
Did you? What, porn star?
Yeah. So I got engaged to a porn star.
Did you?
Yeah, and everything else. And that sort of...
What was her name?
Alessa Savage.
Is that her stage name?
That's her stage name, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Proper name?
Shawnee Whaling.
Okay.
So, yeah, I fell into that sort of accidentally, perhaps. And I actually took a girl with me from the adult industry to a party where my friend was. And he actually started being very inappropriate with her. Saying things to her and everything else. So obviously, as a guy, I've took him to one side. I've given him a little bit of a telling, and arguments happened. Later that night, he's started again kicking off with another girl there. So I've took him to one side again and been like, look, you can't do this and what have you. It's all started kicking off. But as a friend, we'd been in that situation before. We've both had a bit to drink. Yeah. We've both said things, but nothing's ever happened, And then later that night, he's come up to me. He's given me a big hug, said, look, we shouldn't be arguing. We're brothers. Give me a hug. I've turned to look away and bang, he's took my jaw off my face. I lost 6 teeth. I still, to this day, I can't feel my bottom lip. It ruptured the nerves in my face, so I can't feel my bottom lip to about here. I can't feel it. So had to have reconstructive surgery on my face. I got plates, screws here. And that was only, 4 years ago? That was in the middle of COVID. And then 3.5 months later, I made my bare-knuckle FC debut in America. I want to go back to this further. When you woke up and you were in hospital for all that time and everything, what was going through your head? So luckily, I was lucky that he actually hit me on the chin. It took my jaw.
How big's this fella?
He's a big lump.
He's a lump,
and he's not a bad fighter at all. So he's hit me, but where he's hit me on my jaw and not my head, it hasn't knocked me out. It's just took my jaw for a walk, so to speak. I've gone down to one knee. I've managed to get up. I've managed to get one punch on him. He's grabbed me, thrown me into a table like that, and he's just legged it upstairs. We're currently in his girlfriend's house at the time. It was her party. So he's legged it upstairs. I'm absolutely losing it at this point. But where I've got like half teeth where he's hit me and it's knocked half my teeth out. I ended up losing 6 teeth. There is blood spraying everywhere. So it was like cream walls and that. I'm chasing it up the stairs. There's blood everywhere. She's grabbing me. Stop it. Like there's just blood going everywhere like this. I've rung myself an ambulance. The ambulance has turned up. He's come running downstairs out the front door, legged it, and I've never seen him since.
You've not seen him since?
No, I've not seen him since. We've had backwards and forwards online and stuff. I've even tried to organise a fight with him. on BYB. Shout out Jim Freeman and Joe Brown, who know that I've contacted them to try and make this fight happen. And yeah, they've never gone anywhere near it.
Where does he live?
So he lives in Birmingham. Yeah. So
if you saw him today, how would you react?
Don't know. At the time, I just signed for BKFC when he'd done it. So I sort of feel like there was a little bit of jealousy there as well.
Who did he sign for? Before you went to BKFC, you were at BKB, right?
Yes.
How long were you at BKB for?
So I was at BKB for 2 years. I just won the world title.
Under the two Joes?
Yeah.
Joe Brown, Joe Smith?
Jim Brown.
Jim Brown, sorry.
Yeah.
Jim Brown,
Yeah. And then I'd then been offered to go to BKFC in America to leave BKB. So I'd left BKB.
How long were you with BKB for, with Joe and Jim?
2 years. I'd had 3 fights.
Okay. And how did that end? What was that relationship like?
Bad. Yeah. So I was meant to fight a guy called Jimmy Sweeney.
He's a good fighter,
yeah,
isn't
he is a very good fighter. I was going up in weight. I just beat a guy called Sean George for the world title. And then I agreed to fight Jimmy Sweeney.
That was a brutal fight.
It was very
Was that
brutal.
7 rounds?
Yeah.
Mate, that is brutal.
Brutal, it was, yeah.
Mate.
Yeah, we both left a part of each other in that.
Mate. I watched that, I was like, my God. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was...
what was the relationship like then? So you left, you fell out of Eddie as a promoter.
Mm-hmm.
You then went to BKB.
Yeah.
What did you say to those boys? I want to fight.
So just quickly, sorry to butt in. So obviously I've left... when I was 23, I've left Essex.
Yeah.
I've left Matchroom. I'm just trying to get my boxing career back, or just fighting on the small hall shows and stuff like that. And actually, funnily enough, I've done a podcast. I was 26 when I'd done this podcast. I'd done a podcast and I spoke about how I used to make 10 stone. Just, old tales, like war tales, basically, how I, how much weight I had to cut in that. And the British Border Control revoked my license from boxing. So that's what actually led me into bare knuckle, because obviously I'd had my job taken away. At this point, I'd been a professional boxer for like 7-8 years. And the British Border Control revoked my license. So that's what steered me in the direction of bare knuckle. I thought, well, if I can't box, I'm going to go do something else. And the bare knuckle looked like a bit of me, to be fair.
And how long were you with BKB for?
2 years. So I had 3 fights. Yeah.
And why did you fall out with these promoters?
So, like I was saying, I fought Sean George for the world title. I then was in line to fight Jimmy Sweeney, and we'd been training for about 10 weeks for the fight, and it was literally the week of COVID that our fight to date was. So we went into lockdown, so obviously the whole show got cancelled.
Yeah.
And one thing with BKB is, again, there's a lot of ticket selling and everything else to make you personal, that kind of stuff, very much like boxing. But with BKB, if you wanted to get more tickets off them, you had to obviously give the ticket money that you'd already earned to them to receive more tickets. So it got to the week of lockdown, the whole show's cancelled. Well, all my supporters have obviously bought tickets and everything else. So they're contacting BKB saying, well, can we get our money back for the tickets? So they're telling all my supporters that I've got their money, even though I'd already sent it all over to them. So they're telling all my supporters I've got their money. They're messaging me, you've got my money, huge ruckus like that. So I've had to go online with all my bank statements to show that I'd sent all the money to BKB to prove myself that I wasn't lying to my supporters and everything else. And after that, I just went, do you know what? I ain't doing this no more. I ain't fighting for you. Like, if you can do that to me, like after the fights that I put in for you, and you can lie to my supporters, lie to me and everything else, I don't want any part of it. So that's when
I can't see Jim and Joe doing that.
Again,
They're two really good guys.
And again, it's and you have to. The trouble is, unless you're working for these people, you'll take them on face value, and they're great guys. Yeah, lovely, great guy. But promoters, I've not met an honest promoter yet, and that's it. Like at the end of the day, so And if they're willing to try and steal money from your supporters, steal money from you, even though I'd put a 10-week camp in to fight Jimmy Sweeney, and it wasn't my fault the fight got called off. And COVID happened, so it happened, and they're still trying to pocket all my supporters' money. And like I said, I went online. I've made loads of videos about it.
Have you?
Yeah, made loads of videos about it. I've got all the evidence to prove it, all the bank statements, they know all that.
So after that, then you were like, right, I'm going to America and I get a BKFC, which are big time. Is that bigger time than anything else in the world, and the big fastest growing sport as well? Yeah. Well, at that time, when you went over to BKFC, they were talking like you were like, this could be the new Conor McGregor. Mm-hmm. He's got that style, he's got that flair, he's got, he speaks up, says what he wants, controversial game. Yeah. Like, were you thinking, I'm onto something here? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I still think to this day, no one fights like me. No. No one talks shit like me. Yeah. No one's as controversial as me. And perhaps that's a good and a bad thing. Perhaps I say too much sometimes, but yeah, like with that first fight for BKFC, like I say, I'd just come off. What did you do? Did you just go, right, I'm jumping on a plane by myself? Even better. We're in the middle of COVID. They've said to me, well, look, you can come out and fight in America, but you're obviously going to have to quarantine in a different country. You're not going to be able to bring any training team with you. So I flew to Dubai, quarantined in Dubai for 15 days. Then I flew to Vegas. Trained myself in Vegas. Trained yourself? Yeah, trained myself. Why didn't you have a trainer? Because I couldn't, because of COVID, all the visas and licensing and everything else. So I had to just go on my own. Wow. So I went out to Vegas, trained myself in Vegas. So another ex-UFC fighter, Mark Godbeer, who I have to give a big shout out to, is a good friend of mine. He actually came with me and quarantined in Dubai. We'd never met in person at this point, but we were sort of messaging saying, look, this is us. We need to get out to America. We need to fight and everything else. So he came with us. We were just training us to it in Vegas. He was sparring Hasim Rahman Jr. Yeah. And he had COVID. So we're actually staying in the same hotel room, just like obviously separate beds like that. So, and I could see Mark was starting to get ill. And then this Hasim Rahman Jr.'s just messaged him, said, look, I've tested positive for COVID. And Mark's a big guy, 6'5", 18 stone, monster of a guy, like loveliest fella in the world, but an absolute beast of a guy. Anyway, he's bedridden for like a week, coughing up blood and everything else. Like at this point, no one really knew what COVID was. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's going to die. Do you know what I mean? He's coughing up blood in the sink and everything else. I then got ill and tested positive for COVID as well. It just bedridden me. I lost my taste, my smell, just really bad flu. Mark's then had to go to hospital. He's got double pneumonia on his lungs. So he's out. He's well out. But at this point, I've quarantined in Dubai. I've been training myself in Vegas. I've spent no end of money to get here. And I'm just said to myself, like, I can't not fight in this fight. So we're staying in the hotel, the Oyo Hotel it was called. We couldn't leave the hotel because they got them heat guns. Yeah. So obviously we couldn't get in and out. So I'm doing my training down in the hotel gym with COVID. I'm all wrapped up. I've got to lose weight and everything else like that. And it got to like 4 days out from the fight. I've never really told people this story, but I've gone to a medic spot to get obviously a test like that. I'm sat in my friend's car. I've got Dettol. I've got Q-tips. I've just sprayed it on, scrubbed out my nose, gone in, got a negative test, and that allowed me to fly to Mississippi. And then I was able to go and have my fight then. So, and I won as well. And who was paying you then? BKFC. So they were. This is half the argument with BKFC. So a hell of a lot was promised. Obviously, the whole, we'll help fund your accommodation in Dubai, in Vegas, and everything else. So again, I'm pretty much just gone out there on someone's word that they're going to help me.
and I didn't get any help.
And who are you dealing with there? Dave Feldman.
Yeah,
and Dave Feldman's the top guy of
his team. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So more the little minions underneath him than Dave Feldman.
What was your relationship like with Nate Shook?
I've never got on with Nate Shook. Do you know what? One thing I'll say about Nate Shook is, and I wouldn't trust any of BKFC if they said good night. But at least they would smile in my face and at least bother to lie, or at least bother to like say hello. And do you know what I mean? But with Nate Shook, just never once showed me, or I haven't seen him show any of the fighters any respect. I'm not really sure what his problem is, but yeah. So that's been a difficult relationship right from day one with him.
What's Nate Shook's personality like?
I don't think he's got a personality. I think he thinks he's the boss man at BKFC, which, look, you know, he's the matchmaker.
So he puts all the fights together, does he?
Well, yeah, apparently so.
And whose money's behind it? Dave Feldman.
Dave Feldman, all the people who are sort of like investing into BKFC and everything else. You know, you've got Triller, you've now got Conor McGregor, who's obviously owns half of it as well.
So Conor McGregor owns half of it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, no. So, I sort of believe that I was a little bit ahead of my time in Bareknuckle, in that I was the first ever foreign person to travel and fight for BKFC. It was in the middle of COVID and everything else. Like I say, there was a hell of a lot promised to me, and the very least was delivered. And I sort of feel like that where I was the first one, I just wasn't looked after at all. Maybe because it was COVID and that as well. I don't know. You know, had my time come along now, I think I perhaps would have been treated a bit better. I don't know, but it just...
How do you think you were? How do you think you were with going over there and dealing with BKFC, dealing with Dave Feldman, dealing with Shook? How were you as a personality? How did you come across? Did they like you? Did they see you as, oh my God, he's so marketable, and he's hard as nails, and he's a good fighter, we can make this work? Surely, looking in, that combo for me, looking in goes tick, 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 tick. Where did it go wrong?
I honestly think it always goes back to what I said. It's a conveyor belt. The fight game is just a conveyor belt, and if they don't like something about you or whatever it be, they'll just replace you, and it's as simple as that. They don't want you to think that they're after you or that you're valuable. They don't want you to think that, because that's when you might go a bit above your station. I definitely didn't at that point. I was doing everything. Like I say, I'm sticking Q-tips up my nose with Dettol so that I can go and headline your show.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And where was that first show?
Mississippi, Biloxi. And I fought a guy called Charles Bennett, who's an MMA legend. He's had like 90 professional MMA fights. At this point, I didn't know much about MMA coming from the boxing background. So I've got all my friends messaging me, oh my God, I can't believe you're fighting Fenley Bennett and that. And I didn't really know anything about him until I actually fought him. And then afterwards, I really looked into him and I was like, oh wow, yeah, he's been about. He was in the days of like Pride and all that kind of stuff in Japan and China and all that. So
how new is it? How new is it out there in America?
What, BKFC?
BKFC. What sort of year roughly is it really sort of taken off?
So I think it's been going probably about 6 years now.
Only 6?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was the first English person to go over there, fight for the title.
So you'd have been roughly 29 going out there?
Yeah, 28, 29. Yeah.
Is that your prime, do you think?
I would say so. It's funny because the bare-knuckle fighters that do well seem to be in their 30s, late 30s perhaps. I think experience really, pays for a lot in bare-knuckle. You would say in boxing and UFC and that perhaps 27, 28, 29, 30 are your peak years. But the ones who seem to be doing well are the experienced fighters, who have been about. And thing with bare-knuckle is there's a hell of a lot of emotion involved, a hell of a lot. When I say to people, the best way to explain bare-knuckle is having that calmness in the chaos.
Yeah.
Like because it is just so quick, blood, guts, everything else. Yeah, it's brutal. So just having that calmness in the chaos, which comes through experience fighting on the top level in front of all them people, where, you know, if you're going against an experienced fighter, you know, an inexperienced guy, he's not been there. He's not been taken to them places. So he perhaps doesn't know how to deal with it.
That probably goes back to how you were when you first come in. You're doing haymakers for the first 10 seconds, trying to knock someone out.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. Exactly. You know.
Who would have won? Who would have won, do you reckon, at your prime? You or Conor McGregor?
What, Bareknuckle?
Yeah.
I'd say me.
Yeah.
I think I'm super game. I mean, I'm calling for that fight now. I've you know, I know BKFC hate me with a passion, but if you were to say a fight that's going to have all the entertainment to it, all the build up, all the, you know, all the necessary stuff to make a good fight, me and Conor's the one. But, you know, whether he thinks he could knock me out or what he could do to me, I'm going to be there. I'm going to give him a long, hard night. And that's what people want to see at the end of the day. You know, I'm not saying I'm the best, most talented fighter in the world, but you are going to struggle to beat me on heart. And, you know, anyone will tell you that. You've only got to look at my fights to know that.
How many rounds do you reckon it would go?
I mean, it's 5 rounds in BKFC, which I prefer the 7 rounds. I prefer the longer distance because I feel like it comes down, especially with BKFC, the difference from BKB. It was bare knuckle boxing. Yeah. So you weren't allowed to clinch. Yeah. You're in a square ring, and it was 7 rounds. Whereas BKFC in America is like a mishmash of rules from MMA. So you're allowed to clinch. Yeah. It's 5 2-minute rounds, and it's a big circle. Big circle, isn't it? And it actually takes a hell of a lot away from my game, because obviously I look to try and pin people down in the corners and everything else. So the people I struggled with, like when I fought the champion Luis Palomino, he sort of boxed.
Do you think he should have won that?
Nah, he taught me a lot in the clinch game. Yeah, the clinch game.
So give me an example.
So for me, like when I get inside, I'm looking to chuck bombs. Yeah. I'm looking to get close. I'm looking to use my head movement and get my shots off. Whereas every time I was getting close, he was just tying me up with the Thai plum, and he was just ripping my face to bits with uppercuts. And it wasn't even that I was looking to use the clinch, because I'd never done it. And like I said, I couldn't take a training team out there or anything. So I'd never even done it in sparring. So I literally chucked myself into it. And yeah, I learned a lot with the clinch game. Yeah.
How did you fall out with Dave Feldman, the owner of it?
So this is another funny story. So the first ever time I met Dave Feldman, he's come up to me. It was in Miami. So I've flown over to Miami from Vegas on my own to go watch the Palomino Jim Ayler's world title fight. And I've met the whole BKFC crew, and Dave Feldman's come up to me. He'll remember this. This is funny. He's come up to me and he's just shaking his head like this, right? I'm like, all right, Dave. And he's like, you got to stop all this banging, man. I was like, you what? He's like, my dad told me you couldn't have sex a month before a fight and all this going in. So I was like, all right, mate. Okay, all right. I was like, look, you do what you do, David. I'll do what I'm going to do, right? So later that night, I'm at the weigh-in for the Palomino Ayler's fight, and a fighter comes up to me. He's like, oh, my manager absolutely loves you. She loves you. Can you get a photo? And I said, yeah, go on then. So I went over, got a photo of her, I don't know, like early 40s, like big boobs, like surgery, stuff like that, bit of money. So we've had the photo and that done. Later that night, we're all staying in the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami for the show. I've gone out with my manager for a couple of drinks, and this woman starts messaging me, oh, come back to the hotel, get in my room, I'm room so-and-so. So obviously I've gone and I've seen her. The next day I'm sat by the pool, and she will not leave me alone. She's messaging me, come see me, come sort me out, and all this kind of stuff. So I've then said to my manager at the time, Kevin his name was, I was like, wow, this woman will not leave me alone. He's like, whatever you do, don't fuck her. That's the commissioner of the state of Mississippi's wife. Oh, no. So, yeah. So at that point, obviously, it already happened.
Did someone who found out?
So a few, like I told a couple
Rumours.
of people,
Okay.
but rumors are flying about. But my fight was actually in Mississippi as well, about a month later. Right? You couldn't make this up.
You can't make
it's
this
so funny.
up.
It's so funny, right? So, well,
What's her name?
Alita, her name is, right? So, I've weighed in, and I'm actually talking to one of the officials. This is in Mississippi, the night of my fight. I'm talking to one of the officials, just bullshit nonsense.
Yeah.
And I see her walking along in front of me. So I went over to her and I tried to give her a big cuddle, and she just absolutely ghosted me like that. And my friend at the time knew what had happened. So I went over to her and I was like, that's a bit weird. Like, just absolutely ghosted me. And said, well, you know why? Because that official you were just talking to, that's her husband. And he knows there's something going on between you. Like that. So I had my fight. And I say, luckily, I had to go to hospital and have stitches in my face and everything else. So I didn't go to the after party. But she then was showing everyone, all got really drunk, got all the messages out between us and everything else. So that really made it difficult between me and BKFC.
Okay.
Because obviously he's the commissioner of the state. They're always having shows on there and stuff like that.
Sweet.
So that really caused that
cost you a fortune.
That was the first that was the first thing between me and BKFC. I perhaps didn't help myself. But then, like I say to all people, at the end of the day, if she stuck it on me from the first time she met me, how many other fighters is she sleeping with? Do you know what I mean? So that was the first thing between me and Dave Feldman.
How did Dave Feldman react to that?
He sacked me.
Did he call you out?
He sacked me. We
sacked you?
Yeah.
Straight away?
Yeah. So they went online and they sacked me. I mean, they'd actually taken about 6 weeks to pay me as well. So at this point,
you had enough.
I'd had enough.
So how does it work then? Are they meant to pay you straight off the fight?
So being like from the UK and getting paid in America and all that, I understand that, there perhaps would be a little bit of time before I got paid in that. But my fight was at Christmas time. It was I'm living in Vegas. I'm having to stay out there because I've been promised to go on another show and everything else in February. So at this point, I'd booked another Airbnb to stay out there and train. And then I went like 6 weeks without getting paid. So I'm like, how can I be out here? No money. I'm staying in an Airbnb. Then I got pulled off the show in February, so I'm not earning money again. And then, like I say, it just went from one thing to another. And then I headed back to England. I've been sacked. I'm not fighting for BKFC again and all this other kind of nonsense. And then 6 months later, I fought for BKFC again. Against Palomino because
so just so I get my timings right here. 2020 you went out America.
Yeah.
BKFC, everything was sweet. You end up banging that its wife. You got sacked. Was that sacking on the back of not being paid as well? Were you mouthing off at all? Like
I was mouthing off because like I say, he'd completely left me without a paddle in Vegas. Promised me to be on the first ever Knuckle Mania show, which we're talking about. I was in December.
Yeah.
I was meant to be fighting in the February again. So I then stayed out there in another Airbnb. I've not been paid at this point, so I'm trying
Were you winding yourself up at the same time?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. But the thing is, if you need a pound note, you need a pound note. Why do you think he was not paying? Had you annoyed him at all in that period of that 6 weeks not being paid? Would you cheese him off to go, you know what, I will pay, but I'm going to take my time now?
I mean, only he could answer you that question. Do you know what I mean? Like, from my point of view, I'm under the understanding that I've just got in there and risked my life for you. Pay me. Yeah. Like, I've done my job.
Well, as a promoter business, straight away, like someone does a job, you pay them straight away. Done. Thank you, mate. You've done your job. Move on. Exactly it. I want to know what that why that 6 week period you didn't get paid. I want to know why. There's a reason there.
Yeah, so do I.
What do you think it is?
They kept telling me that it was to do with them paying by check into my UK account and all this kind of stuff, which is nonsense because I've had money since done in a few days. Yeah. So nonsense. But yeah, like I say, I was out there. I'd booked another Airbnb. I was then training for a fight that I thought I was on in February. He then pulled me off that show as well. So I'm like...
When he pulled you off, had you been paid by then?
No. So I'm like, well, what am I doing?
So that 6-week period, you two are in head-to-head on socials or whatever it is, slagging each other off, or you slagging him off and him keeping quiet and not paying you as a punishment, I guess. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then he sacked you. But when he sacked, did he paid you before he sacked you?
I can't remember if he did or not, to tell you the truth. It was 6 weeks after the fight that I got paid. So we were very, very nearly in February. Obviously, I've been pulled off that show. So I was like, well, there's no point staying out here now. Yeah. So that's when I was going back to the UK. I think he must have paid me at this point.
And then sacked you.
But yeah, and we were like,
and how did he sack you?
All through like online stuff. I didn't help myself in certain things.
Example?
I put a post up saying basically it was going to be my last fight for BKFC, and in hindsight, I shouldn't have fucked the commissioner's wife.
Is that what you put up?
Yeah.
on a story or on a reel?
On a proper,
Instagram
like post, yeah.
Mate.
So obviously,
you must have been fuming at the time to get to that level to say that.
Yeah, I was, because I'm just, again, I think throughout everything that happens, if I'm risking my life for you, pay me.
Pay me. No, I hear.
Pay me. Like,
how did? Mate, I've got to see that. Have you got the clip?
It's years
somewhere.
Ago. I could
WhatsApp me afterwards. I need to see that.
Yeah.
What was? So when you sacked, did you come back home?
So I come back home.
What year would you come back home?
So what would this be? 2021.
Okay. And then how did you end up fighting for them again after all that?
So when I went out to Miami, and the same night, well, no, sorry, not the same night, the next night after I done what I did with the commissioner's wife, was the actual...
Was it worth it?
I didn't know, probably not.
No, okay, yeah.
But so that was at the weigh-in, and obviously I'm there for the Luis Palomino versus Jim Ayler's world title fight, because as a little bit discussed with BKFC, that is the fight that I want. It's my weight, so whoever wins, that's the fight I want. So me being sat there ringside, again, completely on my own, Palomino's just knocked Jimmy Ayler's out in less than 20 seconds, and I've jumped in the ring. He's like just won the title in front of all his people in Miami. He's like, it feels great to be a champion in front of all my people. I've jumped in, bosh. I've took the microphone. Now you've won the chance to fight the real man, and it's kicked off. It's gone mad. Security have led me back to my hotel room and everything else. So he's obviously really pissed off with me. So this time I've then come back to February. I've been sacked. Luis Palomino's gone on his socials. No one will fight him. So I've just said, look, I'll fight you, and I'll quarantine on the moon to get there. So it happened, and then I went out there, quarantined in Dominican Republic for 15 days, and then flew to Miami and fought him there. But just a quick one on Dominican Republic. So at the time, 3 p.m. curfew in Dominican Republic. COVID's really, really bad. So I'm not even sure why they sent me there to quarantine. In the weeks leading up to going out to Dominican Republic, they're sending me hotels and everywhere else where I'm going to be staying, where I'm going to be training. And then I'm telling you now, I've turned up. They have put me in the hood in Boca Chica, which is like the Haitian part of Dominican Republic. I'm staying in a house, 2 people living in the bottom, 2 people living at the top. I'm sharing a room. They cannot speak any English. Black Spanish. Third world, like really third world. I've got loads of videos and that I've put up of where I've been training. There's water pissing from the roof and everything. So again, with I'm ringing BKFC, like, what actually have you done to me? You've put me in the ghetto here in Boca Chica. I'm the only white person within miles and miles and miles. I can't speak any Spanish. And I was there for like 3 or 4 days until I then took myself to a hotel just to get away from it because I couldn't train or do anything. I'm meant to be training for a world title fight. You've stuck me in the hood.
Yeah.
Like, it was madness. It was absolute madness.
And then what was that? When you got in the ring and it all kicked off and you grabbed the mic and it all kicked off and all security were everywhere.
Yeah.
And who's the guy who dropped the floor in the ring?
Oh, so that was Brian Sosha. So that was...
What happened there?
I just gave him a little push. He just got closer, just got a little push to get out of the way. And yeah, just sort of went... I mean, to be honest, like, I'm quite surprised that Palomino didn't put one on me, to be fair. I think had it have been me and he'd done it to me, I think I probably would have put one on him because, like I say, he just won the world title in front of all of his people. And I pretty much ruined the moment, really.
But you got your fight.
But I got the fight, And
that's my point, though. You know, when you're like the character you are, like, do you not look back with a little bit of regret? You think, you know what, I'm a good fighter, I'm marketable, I'm ballsy, I'm a character, I'm British, out in America. You could have been like this absolute superstar.
Yeah.
Is there any part of you thinking, I made some wrong decisions here?
Nah, not really.
Not at all.
I feel like I'm justified completely in how I feel. Like, because everything they done, even to the point where, you know, they're telling me they're going to help me with my accommodation, with flights, with all this kind of stuff. They're sending me a link to the place I'm going to be staying.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't that.
Who have you had this whole period here? I'm not in shock. Like, since the moment you signed with Eddie, then the BKB, and then the BKFC, there's a pattern going on here.
Promoters.
But it's easy to give blame in life, but sometimes you have got to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Is there any accountability from you?
I mean, look, I'm a hothead, as in, but like I say, I feel fully justified. I mean, you've only got to look at my fights to know that I'm willing to put
your game. Everyone knows that.
I'm willing to put my life on the line for your company. So just show me respect. Show me basic levels of respect. If you're going to promise me something, deliver it. Don't lie to me to get me to do something else. So yeah, I think I'm fully justified to be honest. Like, I know that people off the back of what Dave Feldman and all these other idiots will say, oh, perhaps he is a hothead and all that kind of stuff. But if you're promising someone something and then you don't deliver it, I mean...
Yeah, it's going to piss you off.
But
there's also that responsibility and accountability from you. God, I've made mistakes by not signing it or crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and that's not your world.
No.
Have you ever had anyone look after you?
No.
Have you ever had someone like go, right, Tyler, I'll look after you. I'm just guessing. I'll look after you. Let's get this back on. Do you think Dave Feldman, if he was dealing with a businessman, a promoter, to go, do you know what? If you're representing Tyler, we can get a big fight on in the US. Are you in a position now, in the condition you are and the beatings that you've taken and the beatings that you're given, to go and have a big fight in America?
I am. Yeah, I'm fully. I'll fight anyone and it will be another fight of the night. They know it. I know it. Whether or not it's in my heart to do it anymore for them, because they've just done so much to me now. I'm just thinking to myself, like, why am I getting in that ring
for a pound note for the money? That's the only thing.
Yeah, and it's not life-changing money. I was on $20,000, which in a big lump, oh great. But at the end of the day, I've had to train 10 weeks for that fight. I've had to do my accommodation, my flights,
it gets eaten up
my
very
food.
Quickly, doesn't it? Yeah.
$20,000 goes like that.
Yeah, I agree.
So unless you'll give me something that's going to change my life, why would I get in the ring to put my life on the line for you?
What will change your life? Realistically, knowing what they pay, if there was a 3-fight deal or a 5-fight deal, and we went, this is how we're going to do it. This is where you're staying. This is where you're training. And we're going through the right routine of everything, dealing businessman to businessman, and you being the fighter.
Yeah.
What would you want?
I would just want black and white that the money I'm earning, my accommodation, my flights, my medical attention.
Yeah.
Like my last 2 BKFC fights, I've had to pay for my own medical attention after a fight. Like,
but if all that was put into place, flights, accommodation, food, training facilities, good trainer, How much would you want for a 3-fight deal? Realistically, no, they pay 20 grand US dollars, which is roughly 15 G's back in England. What would you want on a 3-fight deal to make you go, you know what, I'm all in?
Not a lot, you know, like, and it's disrespect to myself. I've said to people, I wouldn't fight for anything less than 30 grand now.
Sterling, pound, not English, okay.
Which really still isn't a lot. It's not a lot. Not when there's fighters for BKFC like Mike Perry, who's earning 600k a fight. Chad Mendes, 500k a fight. There was a woman, Paige Van Zandt, who lost both of her fights, but has got a huge online
Is that on
presence.
BKFC, is it?
Yeah, 450k. So I'm thinking to myself, these guys aren't putting the shows on that I'm putting on, and they're moaning about paying 20k, but they're happy to pay these people 600k. I don't get it.
They might be easier to deal with.
Perhaps
they might have a bigger following. We don't know.
Yeah, no,
they might have a bigger following.
Yeah.
They've gone through the right routes. They've earned the right to get to 400 G's, having an earner. But I'll lay you money they were fighting for 20 and 30 G's and 40 G's leading up to that. I think like with today, like online presence is everything. Yeah.
So if you've got 100, 200k Instagram followers, the promoter's thinking 100, 200k pay-per-views, you know. So I understand that's, you know, that's a bargaining tool for anyone. But that being said, when I'm putting the level, like most of my fights, probably out of the 7 bare-knuckle fights I've had, 5 of them have been fight of the night. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
I've seen. But that's my point. Now I'm looking in here, I'm thinking, hold on a minute. I don't think you should let this dream go.
Yeah.
But you've never had any representation.
No.
And you never had anyone represent you who you don't, and it's someone representing you who you respect, that you don't have to deal with Nate Shook, and you don't have to deal with Dave Feldman. But I know deep down, I lay you money deep down, they're going, that was a shame. Yeah. That's a shame we didn't do something proper with him.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's my gut.
Fully know. I know that Dave Feldman thinks, God, I wish we still had him.
Well, if we open up conversations with Dave Feldman, and we had a conversation with him, would you be up for returning to America and getting on a fight night?
I mean,
if we ticked all the boxes,
if the boxes
were boxes, but that's not hard to do.
Nah, I don't know that so much. You know, so much has happened now. I mean, going forward. So after the Palomino fight, it then took 8 weeks to get paid. After the Palomino fight, I'm back in England. I've been in England for weeks. I still haven't been paid. So a lot's being said. I've actually called Dave Feldman out for a fight, for a bare knuckle fight, because I know.
Was he a good fighter?
Well, he was a professional boxer. He had like 4 fights against journeymen. But I just said, look, promoter against fighter. I even went on the BKFC show and said, look, they were like, who do you want to fight next? I was like, Dave Feldman.
The geezer is paying me.
So, and it wasn't, what was it? Another 15 months later, that's when I fought for BKFC again. But it was the first ever show here in the UK.
Yeah.
So the London show. And that's when I fought the guy, James Lilly, that I touched on earlier, where I split and all that kind of stuff. And at this point, Luis Palomino, the guy that I fought for the title, he'd brought me out to be part of his gym in Miami. So that's the reason why I was actually out there, to be training with him. So I'm training for a fight. I don't know who I'm fighting yet on the London card, but I'm fighting someone. The whole show's been announced. Mike Perry versus Michael Venom Page and all the undercard and everything else. And then must have only been about 3 weeks out. My fight's been announced against James Lilly, which, okay, so it's a hard fight, but I'm fine with that. But in my contract, it's I have to sell 30 grand's worth of tickets.
How much a ticket?
3 weeks.
30 quid?
Probably like 40, 50 quid, perhaps. 30 grand's worth of tickets. I'm in Miami.
So roughly 1,000 tickets you get yourself,
Yeah, I'm 3 weeks out from a fight.
Yeah.
I'm based in Miami. The whole show's been announced. So how am I going to sell 30 grand's worth now? I fought James Lilly, like I say, with about that much vision, and they docked 10 grand of my...
Who docked?
BKFC.
Why?
Because I didn't sell 30 grand's worth of tickets.
Okay.
So they docked me 10 grand of my fight purse.
That's another thing just to wind you up.
Yeah, just to get one over me.
Okay.
Like, how am I going to sell 30 grand's worth of tickets 3 weeks out when you've announced the whole show 5 weeks previous? How am I going to sell 30 grand's worth of tickets? So I obviously didn't.
Who would you, if you were wanting to go back out there and have a last hurrah out there, who would you deal with straight away to break the ice? Would it be Shook or would it be Dave Feldman?
Brian Socia.
Okay.
The guy that I actually pushed in the ring.
Okay.
I get on really well with Brian.
What is he?
So he's just like, he's the presenter of the BKFC show.
Yeah.
He's like,
I saw him on a podcast. He wears a cap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does all bits like on the night.
He was nervous, right?
Yeah.
I watched the podcast. He was, because you were going to come on live. And he was like, mate, I'm really not looking forward to this. Next time I see him, he's going to knock me out. I'm really not looking forward to this. But it just seemed nice, humble. I just think a bit of maturity happened there.
Yeah.
I think there's still something. I still think there's something. You're only 33.
Yeah.
I say only. You've been fighting all your life, but there's still something there.
Yeah.
Are you mentally strong enough to go and do it again?
Yeah.
To go for a training camp?
No one could. None of that worries me at all.
Yeah.
So
what about physically?
My hands are bad now. My hands are bad. I damaged my last fight. I don't know if you see it, against a guy called Tony Soto. That was my last BKC fight about 17, 18 months ago. Again, fight of the night, if not fight of the year. I beat the shit out of him. Like, if you look on the comments on YouTube, robbed. And I obviously thought I was going to get the rematch. I messaged Nate Shook saying, when's the rematch happening? Oh no, we don't think it warrants a rematch. And that's the last I've heard from BKC, and that was 17 months ago. So again, they sort of used me to get the fight they wanted. I should have won that fight.
Or you've used each other.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it. You needed them, they needed you. They're at a point now that we actually don't need him. But I think they must think, we missed out on a British superstar potentially coming through here.
Yeah, I know that Dave Feldman will be thinking, damn, he's...
Why don't we open up the door?
You can try.
Would you game for that?
Look, I'll go there, and I have no problem with fighting.
Where's Dave Feldman live?
I'm not sure what
is he
state
Miami?
Or is he? Nah, it wasn't Miami.
Okay.
I think it may have been New York.
Okay.
But
you got his mobile?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's have a chat after. See what happens.
I know because BKFC are putting shows on in the UK right now.
Okay.
And they put one on at the weekend. And look, there's going to be a lot of people that don't like this, but it sucked.
Yeah.
They haven't got any standout fighters. They haven't. So I know that Dave Feldman's thinking, damn, we missed out.
Dave, let's have a chat with Dave.
But yeah, so
Tyler.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this episode, mate.
Yeah.
You've certainly lived an eventful life.
Yeah, it's been a busy one.
It's been really busy, isn't it? And I know there's other stories in there as well.
There is. There's a lot.
Mate, we could be here for a few hours. Yeah. Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad you made the effort coming down all the way down to Bournemouth.
Always watching the show, so yeah.
Good man.
It's a pleasure to be on there.
You're a gentleman.
Thank you very much.
You're a gentleman.
Thank you very much.
Good man. Cheers, Ty. Wish you all the best, mate. Woohoo! Mate, that is fucking brilliant. That is brilliant, isn't it? Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Can you do us a favour and subscribe to the channel? It's totally free and it massively helps our show. Cheers guys.